place. Those have since changed, but there are still security requirements in terms of surveillance monitoring and things like that for marijuana businesses. That exists at the state level.
I don't trust anything that goes through JCAR. I sat on that committee. Continue on, please.
Sure. So the point of this slide really was just to kind of suggest that, we see everything from cities that are similar in size that have relatively few licenses to density in River Rouge, which is only 3 square miles, and they have 8 licenses available, which according to Crane's article I read was the most in Metro Detroit for a city of its size. So I think as you look at this and you think, well, Taylor's 23 square miles and about 60,000 residents, it's not really formulaic. I don't necessarily think there's a right answer to this based on population density and square footage and things like that. So I think it's just a matter of proper planning and maybe in consultation with city administration and city planning to determine where these facilities best fit in, if that's the approach that Taylor decides to use. I will touch on the fact that Kalamazoo is one community that doesn't have any limits. They do have particular zoning districts that marijuana establishments can be in. So as of 2020, they had 6 active retail and micro-business type licenses. Per the state website that I looked at, as far as using Kalamazoo as their business address, I found 19 active retail type licenses. So 25 square miles, about 70,000 residents there.
Do they have it restricted to I-1 or I-2 or here?
So Kalamazoo has a bunch of different zoning type classifications, but they had, the availability to be in downtown areas, commercial, industrial, even agricultural, I think in some cases.
Sure. Brandon, you know Kalamazoo and Seward?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I've not heard of it, but I don't know.
I know that's the restrictive policy. I think we've heard probably from a number of folks that say, laissez-faire and only do it based upon zoning restrictions and let the marketplace decide. That's also a key decision amongst again if we go forward. That was a good question, right? The laissez-faire policy. What other challenges that they may have faced?
So I will say that, and Ed knows way more about this probably than I do, but there's an existing body of zoning case law in terms of how municipalities can zone. And that's been ongoing for as long as the zoning act has been in place. So there's already existing case law and sort of standards in terms of what types of uses can be approved and where, and special land use approval requirements and things of that nature. So to the extent that in some communities there's sort of this novel process where you're choosing who receives a limited number of licenses. By using zoning restrictions, I think to some extent you're able to buttress yourself with an existing body of law that has sort of been existing in the state of Michigan for a long time.
Councilman?
Is it possible to zone particular streets? Let's say we want to go between North Line and Brush Road and Inkster and Telegraph. It can only be there.
So you potentially do like an overlay district. We've seen that in some areas that have what they call like green overlay districts, which is that they sort of take the existing zoning and just kind of overlay an area where that would be, sort of a green zone, so to speak.
All right, go ahead.
So this is getting a little far into the weeds. This is phase 3. This is after we've already decided that we want it. If you decide that you want it, which licenses, where, how far between. Now, we're talking about potential conditions, whether or not voluntary community benefits would be considered, whether or not a license agreement would be considered, and whether or not the council would consider offering development incentives for companies that are coming in and developing or remediating properties that may be otherwise difficult to develop without those types of incentives. And I don't know that I'm not sure that Taylor's seen that or not with other projects, but things like commercial rehabilitation, industrial facilities, exemption certificates, and things like that could potentially be considered for certain properties.
Westland specifically ruled out any brownfield, I believe any brownfield or other tax credits.
Yes. And then phases 1 through 3 is sort of where a lot of the work is done in the public eye. Phase 4, as I call it, is sort of it's kind of the busy work phase, right? Now we've developed a sense of what the council wants, with input from the city administration, with input from the public, from the cannabis industry, and, city council has given its direction, and now this is sort of a drafting phase. The existing ordinance maybe needs to be amended, or maybe completely rewritten. Zoning ordinance will need to be put into place to accommodate whatever uses you want to allow and wherever you want to allow. There's got to be an application form process for applying. Who's going to rack them and stack them in terms of what, who gets the licenses? What's that selection process going to look like? Whether there's any policies or agreements that need to be drafted and implemented. It's some kind of a long, intense process that may also require additional input as drafts become available from the council and from city administration to determine whether or not these things are moving in the right direction. And then obviously ultimately moving towards implementation, which is really just the beginning. Once you've got an implemented ordinance and implemented processes in place, now you've got to open it up to applicants and see what you get and where you get them. So that's it for the prepared presentation. I appreciate Ed, thanks for having me out, and the council and the mayor. Clerk, thank you so much for having me here. I'm here for any questions that I know we've sort of gone back and forth on some questions already, but if there's additional questions I can answer based on anything maybe I haven't talked about, or if there was something that I did talk about that we need clarification on, I'm here for as long as you guys want to sit here.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, did you go through our ordinance that we already started?
So I overviewed the ordinance. If you look sort of at the beginning of my slides here that you have in front of you, there's sort of some bullet points in terms of what the Taylor ordinance has in it already. I didn't do a deep dive in it by any means.
Sure, if I may, answer Mr. Johnson's question. I believe he's looked at the medical marijuana ordinance, but not the draft of the recreation.
Sorry, I should have been clear. Yes, that's correct. I only looked at whatever was on the books.
Councilwoman?
I wondered, I had asked Mr. Plato if he could please email me a copy of the PowerPoint system. It's a little hard to read, and I wanted to, write my notes to it. And then, did we just get this today, Chairman? Or did you send it to me before?
No, I Googled it myself and printed it out and then realized it'd probably be good for all of you, so I've got my crib notes on it. But basically, in terms of the time, probably a couple hours, two, 3 hours to sit down and read through Taylor's, read through Westland. I kind of pointed out some of the sections that I thought were missing. No, knowing that we were going to have the representative from Westland coming in today, that's why I wanted to sit down with both. But as I've kind of highlighted that people have brought up security, I didn't see that in the Taylor draft. Some of the, again, I'll leave it to you to read both and read any others. It sounds like I came away, Ann Arbor. What's Ann Arbor doing? Kalamazoo, right? I think Kalamazoo is key. We're going to look at the two different major variations. That would be probably the next one. And if you'd like, if I find that ordinance, it should be, of course, online for anybody to find. But if I find it, I'll share it with the council.
I'm going to look at those two, Kalamazoo and which other, do you represent other cities as well?
We do, but not for this particular issue.
Okay, well, that's fair enough, just for this issue.
Right.
Okay.
Well, in terms of resources from MML, if we're a member of MML, what additional, have they compiled the kind of the two different paths, or?
So the Michigan Municipal League has a lot of resources available on its website. Some of it's just for free for anybody that wants to look at it. And I've certainly looked at, Ann Arbor. I've looked at more places probably than I even think to say.